Good evening, everyone, and we are live here on the American Legacy Network. My name is Josh Reynolds, and this is another episode of Meet the Producers. And this evening, I have with me Mr. Dante James. And so, just gonna let you guys know, I had a few minutes to chat with Mr. James before we went live, and you guys are in for a treat. And so, first, I'm going to read a little bit of his bio, so you can learn a little bit about him. But then we're going to let the man speak for himself as well, and also give you guys an opportunity to see a couple trailers of some of his work that are currently on American Legacy Network. So I'm going to read a little bit about Mr. James, and we're going to get right into it. Dante James received a National Emmy for his work as a series producer of the critically acclaimed PBS documentary series Slavery in the Making of America. He is also the recipient of 2 Washington, D.C. Region Emmy Awards. His documentary Harlem and Montmartre, A Paris Jazz Story, screened at film festivals in Paris and Biarritz, France, and was also awarded Best Documentary at the Pan-African International Film Festival in Cannes, France. He wrote, produced, and directed the dramatic short film The Doll. Based on a short story by Charles W. Chestnut, The Doll was named Best Dramatic Short Film at the Hollywood Black Film Festival. For Black Side Films in Boston, Massachusetts, he executive produced the PBS series This Far by Faith, African American Spiritual Journeys. His earlier Black Side projects received DuPont Columbia Awards. He is currently producing the feature documentary God of the Oppressed, which explores Black liberation theology. He is developing, in our own words, a series of short films based on short stories by African American writers. Dante James has a Bachelor of Science and DHL degrees from the Grand Valley State University and a Master of Arts and Liberal Studies from Duke University. During the summer of 2010, he served as a guest lecturer at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. So, welcome, Mr. James. How are you doing this evening?
I'm fine. How are you? And thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
I'm doing well, and the pleasure is definitely all mine and that of American Legacy Network to sit with you this evening to talk about your work, talk about you as a producer and you as a person. So, you know, how did you get into filmmaking?
Well, I actually started in college as an anthropology major. Took a break, went to Minnesota, and got involved in a TV station as a technician, running cameras and working in the studio. And then I decided that I wanted to go back and change my major because I was more interested in content than I was technical quality.
Mm,
So I went back and they had established a public television station on campus. And I worked there as a student. When I graduated, they hired me. And that was the launching of my production career.
wow. So you started off in anthropology and
As an
ended up
anthropology, yes, I was an
in
anthropology
film.
major.
And for everyone out there who doesn't know what that word means, what exactly is anthropology?
It's the study of human beings and
Wow.
the human experience.
And do you find a connection between that interest in your life as a filmmaker?
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, Good filmmaking um, touches viewers and in a range of ways and through a range of emotions.
Mm,
And that in itself is connecting to the human experience because that's what it's about. It's like experiencing and engaging the full range of human emotions in order to become more fully human. So yeah, there's definitely a connection there.
oh wow! And so I think one of the human stories that that I would look at was one of the trailers we actually have on the network, which is the doll. So I'm going to cue up the trailer in just a second, and then you and I can talk a little bit about the doll and that whole project,
Okay.
because I think it definitely, you know, I'm gonna let the viewers see. So give me 1 second. I'm gonna pull this up.
The nigger, on the other hand, was born to submit. He'll neither stand for a right nor avenge a wrong. Long ago, I killed a nigger.
I seem to be having a bit of a internet connection problem. Let me refresh this.
Long ago, I killed a nigger. Teach him his lesson. When one learns a lesson of that sort, one certainly never offends again, nor fathers any others of his breed. Remember, Barber, I want a close shave.
Yes, sir.
My father died at the hands of this man in defense of his daughter. 'Tis time. 'Tis time for revenge.
All right, so that's a pretty serious trailer we just saw there. Can you talk to me about, what did we just see there? What is the doll? What is it about? And why was this man talking all this stuff in the barber chair?
First of all, the film is based on a short story by Charles W. Chestnut. Chestnut was a very fair-skinned person who grew up, actually spent some time in Cleveland, but he was born and raised in North Carolina. And he was the first Black writer to get published by the mainstream press in the post-Reconstruction era.
Wow.
And his writing is not geared towards Black people.
Mm.
His writing is geared towards the white population of those publications, trying to educate them and help them be able to see our humanity and our dignity as people.
Mm.
But this story is about a barber who is a single barber. That's another reason why I like this story, because it's about a single Black man raising his daughter.
Mm.
And he's the proprietor of a barber shop. Well, one day on his way to work, his daughter asked him to fix her doll. He says, okay, I'll try to make time. When he gets to the barber shop, this customer that's in the trailer is in town for a convention. And he goes to the barber shop to get a shave. And when he's telling the story of how he killed a Black person, the barber recognizes the fact that the Black person he killed is his father. So he's in the barber's chair. The barber has a razor on his neck. And the question is, what does he do? What does he do? How does he exact revenge? And I don't know if I should tell you what he did or have the people who are watching tune in and watch it on AL Network. What do you think?
I think I think we should have folks tune into American Legacy Network .tv, and if you haven't subscribed, to subscribe so that you can see beyond what we see in this trailer, so you can get the full story and see what happens next.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's a good idea. So no spoilers on the Meet the Producer series here.
Yeah. But,
Um,
but this film is the pilot for a series of short films based on short stories that we want to do.
mm,
And one of the reasons why is because if you want to really know Black people and really experience Black people and self-definition of in terms of our journey,
yep,
all you have to do is go to our literature because that's
absolutely.
all about self-definition. So we want to do an entire series of short stories of short films based on short stories.
Mm. And so, I mean, that definitely sounds like something that will be an amazing experience for viewers. And how do you go about deciding what stories you want to bring to film?
For this series or in general?
We can talk about it in general, and then we can also talk about this series as well.
I think that for me, it's about little known or untold stories,
Mm,
you know, um, and and even if they are known, stories that are told from our point of view. Like
mm.
for instance, one of my earlier films was a film about Marian Anderson,
Yes,
and
yes,
which ran on the network, as a matter of fact.
yes.
And I was really excited because it was my first PBS film. And I went home and I told my father, I said, Dad, I have this film coming up on Marian Anderson, and it's really, really good. And I want you to tune in to see it. And he said, Yes, 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 that's good, son. I'll watch. But what about A. Philip Randolph? You know,
Mm,
because my father was a union person and he was very much aware of Mr. Randolph
mm,
and the effort to organize the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, the first union in this country.
mm,
So I said, okay. So I went back and I read everything that I could read about Mr. Randolph. And I said, yes, this story needs to be told.
mm.
So we told the story of Mr. Randolph and the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. So in terms of to answer your question, um, I like stories that are about um, Black self definition
Mm,
and affirmation.
mm.
There are many of them out there.
There are definitely many of them out there. I think with you defining how you like to choose your stories, something that's beautiful about that designation, or about the way you define it, is today we call that unapologetically Black.
Mhm.
And it's definitely so important to tell our stories. And so, can you talk about why you've come to really wanted to tell our stories? Like, what drives you to want to tell our stories in the way that you do it?
Um, again, it's well, most my earlier films, okay, are films that I made for PBS, and I outgrew that. Okay,
Mm,
this is not a criticism of PBS. It speaks to my intellectual and artistic growth,
mm,
and it speaks to the many challenges Black folks face today. And I came to the realization going through the PBS system and the fact that they are structured in terms of funding the way that they are, that as an artist, as a filmmaker, as a Black person, I wanted to make stronger statements than the statements I can make on PBS. So that was part of my evolution away from PBS to totally independent filmmaking, and it's difficult because money is really really hard to find. But if it were easy, then everyone would do it.
Absolutely. And I mean, you really just touched on the next question I have for you. Going independent and deciding to really be unapologetically Black. What type of challenges do you find as an independent filmmaker?
Challenges everywhere. Okay. First, there are the most obvious challenges, the money challenge.
Right.
And I
Absolutely.
mean, that's there, it's going to be there. Okay. But the other challenge is filtering through the people who will try to give the impression that they are unapologetically Black. But when it comes time to really support you or either in terms of the project or monetarily, then there are some shortcomings. I think that's one of the reasons why your father and I have come together, and one of the reasons why I appreciate him so much and American Legacy Network so much, because of that commitment to respecting our history and our culture, and never ever compromising that our history and our culture, there should not be a price tag on our history and our culture.
Right.
And unfortunately, there are films out there that do compromise it, and I'm not sure that if it's that people purposely do it or they don't really understand or realize that they're doing it. The fact of the matter is that too often our history and our culture is compromised in the interpretations of it on film.
And so how would you describe the power of partnership? Now, I was gonna ask you a question, this kind of formal question. Well, how do you overcome your challenges, right? But you kind of sort of started alluding to it a bit, which is the power of partnership. But how important is the power of partnership in bringing our stories and actually being successful in getting projects done and created?
That's a really good question. Beyond the the uh, the resources, finding people to partner with in terms of resources. Also, really important is just support. You know, because it's difficult. It's difficult trying to grind and keep your faith, and particularly when you see other projects happening and other projects that sometimes compromise our stories and whatnot. So just that kind of support, where people will tell you it's important that you keep doing what you're doing, because to do it in a compromising or more commercial state, I mean, that's easy. Yeah. So just it's a forming a community of support, other filmmakers, writers, academics, um, that support your vision and will help you and guide you in terms of bringing it through. Like the films that I make are academic support and
Mm,
working with academics who have actually spent time uh, deconstructing these subjects and subject matters, and can give you um, various points of view and various interpretations, because our stories are very complex, and our journey as Black people is very complex.
absolutely.
And I think that too often um, that complexity is ignored or not explored
Hmm.
because of market forces.
Mm. And what kind of market forces are you talking about? Like, what do we mean by that?
I mean, for instance, I have an attorney, and my attorney is in dialogue with some of the mainstream streaming services because
Hmm.
that's where the resources are.
Right.
And it's really, really difficult to get them to see and respect and recognize that there is a market for films that um, respect and engage our history and our culture
Mm.
outside of their marketing data. Because what they'll do is they'll use their marketing data in terms of what has sold before and how many people watch this and that, and as opposed to having the the internal kind of instincts
Hmm.
that we have about our history and our stories. And I think the other issue is that unfortunately, in some cases, in many cases, when they hire um, people of color, Black people, to head production units, they're under pressure to deliver. And unfortunately, they'll go back to the same market analysis approach in terms of deciding what they'll invest in and what they won't invest in. So
Mm.
for me, I think, and what I've been pursuing is trying to find independent investors. Okay,
Mm.
because I think it's important, first of all, for us to own our product, and second of all, as long as someone else is paying the bills for telling our stories, then they're going to want to have something to say about the interpretation of those stories.
You are, yes, yes. And with the last thing you just said, you're reminding me of a streaming service that a lot of us, a lot of people are connected to or subscribed to
Mhm.
within the past, I guess, 6 months or so, released a short series on a particular historical Black woman
Yes,
who who is well known as, the first Black woman millionaire, right?
I'm very aware of that. Yes.
And I think, what you just spoke to was very evident in the end product of that particular piece, because at a minimum, a lot of it was kind of historically inaccurate. And in a little bit, when you go beyond the minimum, it seemed like there was a lot more included for entertainment purposes than it was for telling a true story. So it's kind of like, you get away with by saying, oh, this was inspired by. And so it's kind of like this woman existed, that's the inspiration. Now here's this whole story that may or may not be true. And I think, it came under a lot of criticism,
Yes.
and I think well-deserved criticism, because on the one side it was a very entertaining series, but on the other side you start to wonder, or you start to think about historical integrity and maintaining the integrity for that particular woman, the historical figure. And so, I think what you're saying is definitely true. It's important that we are able to tell our own stories.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I think also for this particular project that you're talking about, um, I think that again, it's important for the filmmakers to accept the responsibility
Mm,
to respect our history and culture, and not just be in a position where you go with the flow because that's where the money is. Um, and I think that also um, reinforces the importance of working with academics and historians and scholars. Because for us, a film is never just a film,
mm,
you know? Um, if you go all the way back to uh, the birth of a nation,
right.
you know, and those kind of images and those kinds of interpretations
Hmm.
of us still exist today.
Yes.
And you have to understand the power of images and
Hmm.
how they impact um, society beyond just the entertainment factor of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, we're going to change gears just really quickly. We're going to stay kind of in this space, but change gears a little bit. I know another piece that you have on American Legacy. So on the network, you have The Doll, which is a short, but you also have a bit more of an extended piece, which is a documentary on Marian Anderson.
Yes.
And so that's something you spoke about a little earlier. You know, um, as a producer and a filmmaker, how do you approach those two different types of projects? Because one is short and one is a bit longer. So, can you talk a little bit about the process of developing a film and producing it, and speak to the different types of films that you come out with?
Well, specifically in terms of Miss Anderson, and I think in any film, um, the first thing that I did was I read everything that I could read.
Mm,
Um, Second of all, we gathered as much footage as we could. And then after that, then I felt like I was prepared to go and have a conversation with Miss Anderson because
mm,
there's nothing. I think that it's an insult
mm.
to a historian, to a public figure, to an artist to go and talk to them about making a film and you haven't done your homework.
Right.
That is, it's just an insult. So we went to see Miss Anderson,
Mm,
and she had been approached by many people, but for whatever reason, she said, "Yes, he's the one." And we spent time talking with her. And we went back and interviewed her 2 times,
mm.
and we actually screened the film at the Kennedy Center in Washington D.C.
Oh wow.
And Miss Anderson came,
Wow.
and she was wheelchair bound,
Mm,
and we got her out of the wheelchair and wheeled her in, and there was a little reception, and then we went down into the theater, and Miss Anderson had not seen anything, nothing. I'm sitting right next to her, in the theater. The lights go down, and I'm thinking to myself, what if she doesn't like it?
Yeah.
And Miss Anderson was so um, uh, reserved, but yet gracious.
Hmm.
Never said anything at all to me during the film. But 5 minutes into it, she reached over and grabbed my hand and held my hand throughout the entire film. She never had but she never said anything.
Wow.
It was incredible. It was incredible. So, in terms of the approach, it's like learn everything you can about the subject, and then get the other people's interpretations
Hmm.
about her. I can remember going to, you know, who Mr. Todd Duncan is.
I don't.
Todd Duncan was the original Porgy and Bess.
Okay.
He and Miss Anderson were friends.
Wow.
We went to film Mr. Duncan uh, and Arundel on the Bay up in not far from you in Maryland.
Mhm.
And Mr. Duncan was blind at that time. And Mr. Duncan said to me, Dante, come in here. And I said, yeah, okay. And he said, sit down. He says to me, you have the opportunity to tell the story about a great, great woman.
Mhm.
Now, you better not mess it up.
No pressure.
Said, if you mess it up, I'm blind, but I'll still find you. You know, yeah. So I mean, just the idea of engaging those kinds of people,
Hmm.
thought and open doors, and made the possibilities that you and I have today possible, either directly or indirectly.
Hmm.
You have to do it right. You
Yeah.
know, you have to do it right.
Mm. And so I know you said she didn't speak to you during the documentary. Did what kind of responses she have after the screening was over?
No, I mean, she hugged me and and said that she was really happy with what we had done.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, as someone who studied opera in college,
Uh-huh.
and that's, you know, my degrees in singing and vocal performance, you know, to see to speak to someone who actually did a documentary, and not only did a documentary but actually met
Yeah.
and twice interviewed Marian Anderson, that's really special.
Yeah.
um you know, and obviously you had a whole lot of other people that were a part of the documentary process and helping put her story together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, on the producer side of things, you know, you were able to get Miss Anderson to be a part of the project. You know, what was it like trying to reach out to other folks who you brought in for interviews and brought in to speak on her?
That's a really interesting question. Out of all of the people that we talked to, and it was Duncan, it was Miss Dobbs. We spoke to uh, Isaac Stern. Everyone, sort of a who's who in the business, you know. Out of all of the people that we spoke to, never, ever, ever did anyone have a negative word to say
Mm.
about Miss Anderson. And as a matter of fact, when we finished the film and went to a PBS Strand to ask them about airing it, that was one of their criticisms. They came back and they said that, well, there's no criticism of her. And my response was, well, um, it is possible
Mm.
for Black people, particularly people of her generation, to live their lives in such an exemplary way where there is no criticism. I mean,
Wow.
the same qualities that Miss Anderson has, I see them in my grandmother and my grandfather, I see those qualities every day. So it's not that unusual. The only difference is that, well, my grandmother couldn't sing like Miss Anderson, but in terms of those kind of higher moral standards,
Mm-hmm.
that was very much a part of the Black experience then. That's the way that generation was.
Mm.
And I think it's really important for us to try to rekindle some of that,
Mm.
reconnect to some of that. And one of the ways to do it is through films and stories about people that have that character.
Mm. I mean that's absolutely amazing because I mean honestly, in the opera world and entertainment world, people who perform at a really high standard, oftentimes there are stories about how they interacted with other musicians and other collaborators, and to have a to have a film where everyone's like, no, she was an amazing person, stand-up person, that is very unique, and especially because she was one of the early Black opera stars.
Mhm.
I think something you talked about earlier in our conversation that I thought was an interesting theme was community, right? The idea of building a community and having support from your community, and it seemed like Miss Anderson had a good amount of support from the Black church, um, as if not a launching pad, but definitely providing a venue. And so
Mhm.
there were a lot of people. I think it was Union Baptist Church,
Mhm. And for that,
that folks, they supported her career. How important again is that support? And as a producer, as a filmmaker, but just for Black art and Black craft to be able to actually you know thrive.
well, that's another really interesting question, and it sort of ties into or connects to one of my current projects, which is this documentary. It's a feature-length documentary on Black liberation and womanist theology,
Mm,
and it's grounded in the work of Dr. James Cone.
okay.
Dr. Cone was at Union Theological Seminary for 50 years,
Wow.
and um, is generally known as the father of Black liberation theology. The idea that Christianity uh, is and should be a tool for liberation,
Mm,
that we have the right and the responsibility to interpret Christianity out of our experience. It goes back to what we were saying about self-definition.
mm-hmm.
That should happen in terms of religion and Christianity too, you
Right.
know. And
Absolutely.
Dr. Cone, um, I'm really proud of this. Out of all the filmmakers in the country, he picked me to tell his story. And he gave us the rights to use the title of his book, God of the Oppressed, as the title of the film.
Mm,
And Dr. Cone also, he passed away back in 2018.
mm-hmm.
Um, um, Also suggested people that I go to
Mm-hmm.
help me raise the resources for the film.
Wow.
Well, unfortunately, um, I'm experiencing I'm experiencing I think some of the problems that Dr. Cone experienced for 50 years,
Mm,
because the idea of 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 defining and the Christian experience
mm-hmm.
through the Black experience is very threatening to a number of people and to a
Yes.
number of foundations.
Yes.
And so consequently, it's been difficult, but we're going to keep on plugging and keep on plugging, and we'll get the film made. So, and in terms of trying to establish a community, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that would help support that film
Mm.
and support that project, and people who respected Dr. Cone.
Mm.
Um, that's been a struggle also, but we're
Mm.
going to keep on plugging.
Definitely. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned God of the Oppressed, because I'm going to take a moment to share one of the trailers for God of the Oppressed, which is on American Legacy Network. So I'm going to pull that up now.
Okay.
Black liberation theology's very existence is a tool for justice, especially for black people, but all poor people. It's a tool for justice. It sees the Christian faith as defined as working against injustice and for wholeness in the community. So in that sense, it is a tool against Donald Trump. And it's a tool against anybody who is against justice for all people.
That's a powerful introduction to the project.
That's
Uh,
Dr. Cone.
wow.
I have 3 hours with him.
Wow.
3 hours. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was the last interview that he granted before he passed away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And when we talked about it, he said to me, he said, Dante, the only thing I want to do this summer is finish what's going to be my last book.
Mm.
But we can do this. And when he said finish what was going to be his last book, I didn't realize that he was ill.
Mm.
I thought he was just retiring.
Mm.
But he was saying it was his last book because he had been diagnosed, you know. And we did this interview, and almost 8-10 months later, he passed away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It's so, as a producer, as a black filmmaker, you know, what does it mean to you to be able to capture these historical figures and these really change agents, and to be a huge part of their story being told and story being preserved?
I feel privileged. I feel really, really privileged
Mm.
to have the opportunity to, I mean, Dr. Cone, John Hope Franklin,
Mm.
Mr. James Farmer,
Wow.
Miss Anderson. I mean, the list goes on. Not even some people still living. Miss Marion Wright Edelman. You know,
Mm.
the
Yeah.
idea of having the opportunity to sit down
Mm.
and talk to these people is like an incredible experience and an incredible responsibility,
Mm.
you know, to make sure that first of all that I've done my homework, and that that they and all of the work that they put in is respected, but yet
Mm.
also, you know, figuring out how to do this in an engaging way, because after all, it is a film, you know.
Right. Right.
So I mean, but it's like it's fun. It's really really fun, and um, It's almost like each film is different. You know, each journey is different,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost like each day of your life is different, and
Mm-hmm.
you go through every day in your life, and you engage in people, and you engage in your environment, and hopefully you're growing and evolving and becoming a better human being. Well, each film project is the same way as
Mm-hmm.
you engage the subject and people around it, and you study and you research and whatnot. Um, so that process itself also, I think, hopefully, um, touches you intellectually, spiritually, as you grow and makes you. And at the end of it, you're hopefully a better human being.
Mm. Wow. Wow. Before we got on camera, well, on live rather, you
Mhm.
mentioned that um, that filmmaking is an interdisciplinary process.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, we've already talked about how much research it took
Mm-hmm.
to really make a film and respect the subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in that research, you're looking at it from a historical perspective,
Mm-hmm.
a political perspective, a sociological perspective, a psychological perspective, you know, a cultural perspective, particularly for the things that I do, you know. And then of course it's art and it's music and all of those things. So that in itself makes it an interdisciplinary process where you bring all these disciplines together
Mm-hmm.
to tell this story and interpret this story and interpret this history in an engaging way.
Mm. Okay, that makes sense. So we're nearing the end of our time together, but I want to get into what I call a lightning round, or so they're a bit of fun questions that aren't
Okay.
directly focused on film, but these are fun, so people can get a chance to know Dante a little better. You
Okay.
ready?
Yes.
Okay. Who are your top 5 musical artists that you like to listen to?
Um, that's easy. Miles Davis. Um, Stanley Turrentine, um, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, and anyone else that was on CTI.
Okay.
That's Bob James and Grover Washington and that whole CTI crew.
All right. What's your favorite sport?
That's an interesting question. It varies. Um, right now, and for the past 3 or 4 weeks, I've been really into this thoroughbred horse racing. You know, they run the Kentucky Derby right here in Kentucky, so I love that. Um, I like basketball. Uh, Everyone when you get to my age or our age, tells stories about how good they could play. So, so I really like baseball. Thinking person's game. I
Hmm.
don't know that I have a singular. I don't know that I have a singular favorite.
Okay, okay. And it's I think it's awesome that you also mentioned the Kentucky Derby, because I remember years ago American Legacy ran an article about black jockeys.
Yeah,
And there's been a lot of talk about it, because most of the jockeys who won the Kentucky Derby in its earliest days were actually black jockeys.
yeah,
And then somehow we were a bit edged out of that particular sport. But
yes.
we can talk for hours on that too. But last lightning round question. What's your favorite color and why?
My favorite what?
Color.
Black.
That's a good color. That's a good color. Actually, this is a bit more substantive question. If someone is looking to become a filmmaker, what is your advice to them? And I'm somewhat alluding to something we talked about again before we got on live. where you mentioned that anyone can become a filmmaker, but you had more to say about that.
Well,
Can you speak to that a little bit?
yeah, well, what I said was that anyone can get a film made, but that does not make one a filmmaker. You know, filmmaking is a craft,
Right.
and that craft is interdisciplinary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but if someone if someone is interested in filmmaking, or someone, when young people come to me and I have a production spot available,
Mm-hmm.
I tell them to bring me a writing sample.
Mm.
And I tell them that because it's really important to be able to put ideas together in a clear and coherent way.
Yeah.
And if one can do it on paper, then there's a good chance that those skills will transcend over into filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really important to be able to write if you're going to be a filmmaker, and to be immersed in the liberal arts.
So, how can our audiences, find out more about your work, or get in contact with you, or view your work?
Well, my website is Black Pearl Media Works, www.blackpearlmw.com. Black Pearl Media Works. If you search that, it'll pop up, and all of my contact information is there.
Awesome. And so, again, we want to thank you for taking time out. Again, I want to highly encourage folks to get on American Legacy Network.tv and subscribe. We do have an offering that I'm going to pull up on my Zoom screen in a second, especially that it's dealing with the times, and offering for people who are new subscribers to the network. So if you decide to subscribe to American Legacy Network, you will receive a custom COVID. And so, again, I do encourage you to subscribe. And so, again, you can subscribe by visiting AmericanLegacyNetwork.tv. And did you have any final words you want to say before we signed off?
I would just like to say that I too encourage people to subscribe and support American Legacy Network. The leadership, Mr. Rodney Reynolds, is a resource that we as Black people and humanity in general should appreciate and support.
Well, thank you for that. I definitely agree with you on that statement. But thank you again, Mr. James, for taking the last hour and change to talk with me about your work and you as a person. And so, again, everyone, thank you for tuning in to Meet the Producer series. American Legacy Network, again, is at AmericanLegacyNetwork.tv. We're also going to have more programming for you virtually that you guys can engage with here on our Facebook page. So thank everyone for joining us, and everyone have a good evening.
Take care.